Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for our next webinar in the Retail Insights series. And this one is a special one. We're talking about the Pandemic Bounceback Report and what are the top 5 metrics for retail success. And we have Mr. Paul Erickson and Dane Cohen here from Management One and Sara Durcholz from Joe & Co, a valued Management One client. Thank you guys for joining us. Before we get into the actual content that we're talking about here, I do want to go over a couple of ground rules with GoToWebinar. So we want to make sure that you guys get the best audio. If you use the GoToWebinar panel, there are a couple of drop downs, so choose the best audio that works for your system. And ask us questions. There is a questions panel, and at the end we are going to take questions from the audience. So please type those in as we go, and we'll save plenty of time at the end for your questions. The most common question that we get is, are you recording this? And yes, we absolutely are recording this. So if you do need to leave a little early, feel free to do so. We are going to send out a recording afterwards. So who is Management One? If you're not familiar with us, thank you for joining us here. Management One is here to provide financial security for our people, our clients, and our affiliates. And we do that by providing merchandise intelligence and educational sessions like these for independent retailers. And we operate under a set of core values, being generous heart, courage, curiosity, adaptability, commitment, and collaboration, like these sessions here. So why are we here today? As you all have seen over the last 18 months, the COVID-19 shutdown and the entire pandemic itself has caused a pretty massive fallout for independent retailers. We've seen thousands of store closures, and we try to find a commonality in those. Why were a lot of these stores closing? Why were a lot of the doors never going to reopen again? And we saw that there were some commonalities in there. There was a lot of high debt. A lot of these retailers had poor inventory management, just way too much cash tied up in their inventory. Some of them were just winging it on what to buy. There's a market coming out, they see a lot of new items and they just hoard a lot of items that sit there in the store for way too long. And they just don't have as much insight on that inventory and cash flow. So when we really started looking at our own clients internally, and if you folks received the newsletter that we send out each month, we like to put out where our clients are at in terms of revenue month over month, year over year. And we started seeing that many Management One clients were bouncing back much quicker, and they started seeing higher revenue numbers now that we're seeing even above 2019. So we thought, why is that? And when you dive into it, there are certain metrics in your inventory and your financials that really matter. And are retailers focusing on these? Do they even know they exist? Where do you pull the data from to really look at how these numbers stack up? So we thought, well, let's put together a report and share the information for the entire retail community. And that was really how the Pandemic Bounceback Report came to be. And we really center on about 5 different metrics that you should focus on. And that's why we're here today. And we brought Paul and Dane and Sara together to talk about not only the metrics, but more so how those are used in business, how the data is collected, and why it is so important. Why does it really even matter to look at this? And at the end of this webinar here, I will include a link in the chat where you can download the report itself. And rather than go page by page, line by line in the report, we really just wanted to have an organic question and answer session and let you guys read the report on your own time. So that being said, I do want to turn it over to the godfather of retail himself, Paul Erickson.
Thank you, Nico, and hi, everybody. I'd like to start out talking about my children. It's my opportunity to talk about my 5 kids, one of which is a complete idiot, but that will be left to conjecture who I'm talking about. But they're great kids, and I have spent a literal fortune in sending them all to college, from Boston University to the University of Minnesota to Drake to Oklahoma State, St. Olaf, a private school here in Minnesota. Really expensive. Everybody that's on this call that has kids know that higher education, and it doesn't have to be university or colleges, but it could be technical schools, what have you, is statistically shown that it increases the odds of them being happier in life, being more fulfilled, and more successful in making more money. And education counts. So I think that's my preamble to talk a little bit about, let's all get a little more educated over the next 40 minutes or so. Nico kind of touched on it, and I just want to go into it a little deeper. The landscape today is very, very interesting. From 18 months ago, we all have less competition. 20,000 doors closed over the last year and a half. Chains, the big chains, some of the big chains have been truly weakened. E-commerce has grown, of course, but the consumer really is not ready to abandon, I think, the social experience of shopping in a real store, a brick and mortar store. Your customers' incomes have grown. Savings have grown during the pandemic. We had at the end of the pandemic in March, we can call that the end of the pandemic, or the beginning of the end, possibly. There was $1.6 trillion in an ocean of cash sitting out there that the consumer had not spent in the United States because they didn't go on vacation, they weren't going to restaurants, traveling, etc. That really has not dipped down much, as we're still sitting on 1.2 trillion. So the best is yet to come. There's a lot of money out there. GDP is projected to rise as much as 8% this year in 2021. And as Nico said, at Management One, we're seeing not just small, but solid, very large double-digit increases our clients are showing over 2019, obviously not 2020. And I also just want to comment a little bit also what Nico said, what we learned, because we have learned from this, that retailers that were vulnerable to the slowdown were not necessarily what you would hear in the common narrative from the so-called retail experts. People say, well, if you were a store in a mall, you had a problem. If you were an apparel shop, you had a problem. If you were selling shoes, you had a problem. If you were in luxury business, dressier apparel, you had a problem. And yes, those verticals were probably adversely affected, but we could name retailer upon retailer in each of those verticals that actually did very, very well in 2020. So what was the one trait that retailers that had problems, retailers that went into either Chapter 11 or in complete bankruptcy, Chapter 7, retailers that closed doors? Those were the stores, as Rico said, the overly leveraged stores. And one of the things we discovered is that we've always taught this at Management One, but more important than ever is liquidity. Liquidity is absolutely everything in retail. And here's the dirty little secret about retail. You can actually run your store without a profit for months at a time. Many of us do if we look at our monthly income statements. And you can be fine. But you can't run your business for a day without cash. Any retailer that is out of cash and out of the ability to borrow cash is literally out of business. And so what we found is that there are these new cash flow metrics which have become the new holy grail for retail. So Lico, if you want to go to the next slide. Retail continues to evolve, and retail continues to adapt to a changing consumer mindset and preference. But I think for retailers, it's really, really important to understand that there are new relevant metrics that actually value and measure retail performance better now than the old suite of metrics, which were built for a time that no longer exists. And the first one that I want to talk about is the whole idea of cost of goods sold versus cost of goods purchased. This is about the general theme of what we're going to be talking about on this webinar today, which is cash is king. So what's wrong with cost of goods sold? It's one of the most important elements in creating your financial statements from your accountant. And what's the difference between cost of goods sold and cost of goods purchased? Well, it's a very easy thing to explain, in my opinion. Cost of goods sold, the problem with cost of goods sold is that it is what it says it is. It is the cost of goods that you have sold, not the cost of goods that you were purchased. Let me give you an example of that. Sara went out and bought 50 widgets. After 5 months, she had great markup on them. She had a 70% markup on them. And after 5 months of the 50, she sold 5. Well, under the cost of goods sold scenario, she would look like she's making money hand over fist. Well, on those 5, she made money. She still had 45 left to sell. So in other words, the cost of goods purchased is nowhere near what it should be. And this is the first relevant metric that is important as we go forward. Start looking at your cost of goods purchased as a key denominator, cash margin versus gross margin. Look at the cash margin you're producing in your business, and then from that, you can start doing other new metrics, which is the old metric of gross margin return on inventory investment versus the cash margin. In other words, if you're going to look at the amount of merchandise that you have tied up in inventory, at the amount of dollars you've tied up in merchandise that's not selling, and compare that to profitability, which can be wildly inaccurate at times, it's a much better metric to look at the amount of cash that inventory investment you made and how much cash it produced, which is cash margin return on inventory investment. Look, there's simply three areas that when we get a new client that we look at and tailor the merchandise plans to their own financial goals. And the financial goals really are around three things, essentially. How much sales can we do over the next year? What's our potential? And management was excellent at finding potential in terms of revenue that you didn't even realize you were missing. Number two is what's the margin on that revenue? We want to know that. Of course, that's why we plan, particularly for those verticals where markdowns are a factor, we plan markdowns. And third is return on investment. What's the return on investment that you want to achieve in terms of your inventory? And that is directly to stock turnover. If you want to go to the next slide, Nico. So the inventory turnover is really, I would say, for some retailers, the eighth wonder of the world. They don't really understand how it works, how you can plan it, how do you achieve it, how do you sell my inventory more quickly. But there are very, very important other metrics that we need to look at, the new suite of metrics. And the first one is called a stock to sales ratio. We've got to start looking at the ratio of inventory to sales. That is essentially a short-term view of inventory turnover and managing that. And the first thing we also look at, and another metric, an old metric is how much inventory do you have in the store? The new metric is how much inventory you have in the store that's valid? How much inventory do you have in the store that's current? Because that's really the key going forward. And an exercise that I always have retailers look at is how much of your inventory is older than 4 months old? I mean, if you think about it, Halloween is this weekend, and if you look at how much inventory do you still have in your store from 4 months ago? 4 months ago, I believe, was the end of June. That was a long, that we were now in the midst of just starting to think about summer, and now we're looking at we're in the middle of Q4. 4 months is a long time. And if 30% of your inventory is that old, and I don't really care what vertical you're in, that's an issue that you're having to deal with right away. Very, very, very important. And it's all getting back again to profits versus cash flow. The last thing I want to talk about is markdowns, because markdowns are also a big, big part of this and how we look at markdowns and how that affects inventory turnover. Because too often retailers look at markdowns, and again, they're looking at profit over cash. A retailer looks at thinking profit first and not cash flow first is very, very timid typically on taking a markdown, or doesn't even take a markdown at all. And that's one of the worst things they could do in terms of in every aspect of worrying about their image in terms of being a sales store. If you don't take markdowns to the degree that you should, you'll start to accumulate inventory, that your inventory gets older and older, again, going against the other view of not how much you have, but how much is current. Your customers will see the same inventory over and over and over again. And at that point, they'll start to visit your store less. And what happens is you're going to have a financial difficulty that could turn into a financial crisis. So the point that I really want to make here is that we all need to look at how we manage our inventory differently. And I think the pandemic has taught us that. And it doesn't matter what vertical you're in. Having too much inventory, the problem that we have, I think, for too many retailers is that we hold too much inventory. We don't flow in enough new inventory. And that may seem like a contradiction in terms, is that we hold too much and don't buy enough. But that actually is the secret sauce to profitable sales, increased cash flow, and cash profits. Plus, I think the important thing also to remember is many times retailers ask the wrong questions. They come to, at Management One, we talk to retailers all the time, and one of the things they say is, Paul, I have to find out a way to attract new customers. So I'm spending a lot of money on social media, I'm spending a lot of money on marketing, I'm doing all of this, I have to find new customers. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the real question is, how do I get my existing customers to buy more? And that secret is to continually get in and out of merchandise, a flow of fresh goods all the time, not being afraid to get rid of mistakes quickly, very, very quickly. And what you'll see is customer visitation. How often your good customers come in your store is going to increase. Today, typically in a good boutique, our good customers come and visit us 3, 4, maybe 5 times a year at best. If we can increase our turnover, if we can sell our inventory more quickly, it can easily be proven statistically that we can take customer visitation from 3 to 4 times a year and increase it to 4 or 5 times a year, and that will equal about a 20 to 30% increase in sales alone. This has a direct impact on revenue, on cash flow, and on your margins. So again, inventory turnover, these new metrics that I know that Sara and Dane are going to explore a little bit in the next section coming right up is going to be everything. And now I think I know the fact that Nico is thinking, when is Paul going to ever shut up and introduce the true stars of this webinar? So I want to just introduce Dane Cohen and Sara Durcholz, and they're going to talk a little bit more about this from a real world perspective. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dane.
Thanks, Paul. And I know that I'm really excited to have Sara join us today. And I think one of the big things when we put together the post-pandemic bounce-back report was, how was this really impacting retailers out there? You know, I think it's a lot of times we could talk about stuff in theory, but in reality, these are real issues facing real retailers across America and globally. So we're so excited to have Sara with us today. Just to give you a little bit of background on Sara. Sara is the owner of Jo & Co., which is a women's accessories and apparel boutique in Southern Indiana, now with 2 locations. First opened in 2012 and made the brave decision to open an additional location in the middle of the pandemic, which we will definitely touch on. And Sara, of course, is also a Management One client. So Sara, I want to jump right in, and as this is the kind of post-pandemic bounce back report, I kind of got to go back. What did it look like, in the lead up and in the start of when all the craziness happened?
Oh man. Well, there's a specific word for it out there whenever COVID happened, but not only did COVID happen, I had just given birth to my second child. And so I was on maternity leave when all this was happening. So I had just gotten back. It was my first day back. And here in Indiana, that same day, that's when we were forced to shut all store locations down. And 80% of my business is done in my brick and mortars. That was before even I had my second location. So, I came home and I had a full meltdown. I went into panic mode, which, I feel I have a lot of friends who are business owners as well. And that stage kind of hit everyone. It just hit me really early. I went in full on panic mode and I just didn't know what we were going to do. Here I was faced with 80% of my business is done in my stores and we had to shut down. And, I have a family at home. I have employees I need to take care of. How are we going to make this work? And, I have a godsend of an inventory planner, Mary, who, she would get on the phone with me and say, okay, we've got this. We're going to pivot. We're going to make this work. And I put my head down and I got to work. And, we opened a second location in the middle of the pandemic and I made it. There are still moments of panic, don't get me wrong. I'm still not out of the COVID panic, but it's a lot easier having that data to kind of help drive those decisions for me.
So take us through a little bit. How did we go from that, very relatable state of panic to I feel the confidence to get out there and open a second location?
I'm trying to think back, and honestly, my brain is so fried from everything that happened. But looking back, when I was going through it, it was okay. We'll bring the stock home. I may have to do more lives. We're going to have to focus on really pushing those online sales. Okay, so we're going to have certain expenses that are going to be there with having to be open right now. Unfortunately, I did have to lay off my team. We were able to get PPP loans down the road, and I was able to bring them back. But there were certain expenses I was able to cut out to try and make it work. We luckily were only shut down for a month. So I was able to really dive into my plan, see where we were, what kind of promotions I could run to make this work, really look at open purchase orders, work with my vendors and say, can we push this out? I need it. Can I cancel this? What can I do? And keep that open line of communication on all fronts to make it manageable, so I wasn't forced with all this inventory coming in and the cash not being there.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit on it there. It sounds like you were able to make decisions not based on fear and not based on
Yes.
panic, which we were all experiencing, but decisions made on data.
Yes, yes. I just really kind of had to put my head down and look at the numbers that were in front of me versus going down that lane of all that fear and letting it swallow me up. Instead, I kind of had to put blinders on and say, okay, it's time to get to work. We're not going to let this take us down. We're going to make this work. And having all that data and those metrics in front of me to make that work, and a support system behind me too. If I didn't have that support system behind me, I don't know what I would have done. And wine, lots of wine.
Well, Mary Landgrave and a glass of wine will solve all problems.
Yes, it will.
And so, Paul's going over through it, and one of the focuses on the topic of this webinar and the report we're releasing are the new metrics that are driving retail. Cash flow, really looking at your cash margin. Is that something that you can relate to now, having and operating 2 stores? Talk us through a little bit about how you're looking out for your cash flow.
Yeah, and we actually didn't talk about this during our pre-call, but 3 to 4 years ago, I think right when I signed on with you guys, I'll be honest, I was $100,000 in debt. And so I had all this debt behind my business, and that's kind of what really pushed me to make these decisions. And going back to what Paul said, I had that really eye-opening, realization. I'm a numbers-driven person. Looking at my profit and loss statement, it was showing, hey, we're profitable. Where's the money? Where's the cash at? This isn't making sense to me. And also we were in debt, and I wasn't able to pay a lot of that back. So when Mary and I would sit down, and when I first signed up, she walked me through the report and showing, I think, where is it at? On the bottom of the report, where it'll show you, your your cumulative margin, I believe, and it will lay out like, this is exactly how much cash you should get in return. And seeing that, implementing the plan, sticking to the plan, and not being scared of markdowns, I'm fully out of debt 3 years later. I was able to pay all that money off in debt with, using other systems as well, like Profit First, and putting that cash first. I was able to get debt free thanks to Management One and other systems as well.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Paul, you said it right in the beginning of your presentation, but I think this is one of the most interesting phenomenons of retail. And the real difference between retail accounting and basic accounting is that you could be showing a profit on paper, and your cash flow is just not saying the same thing. Your bank account is not telling you the same story.
Well, that's right, Dane. Accounting looks at inventory as being an asset. And in the fashion business, particularly, inventory is only, in my opinion, an asset until you sell it. And so, so the problem is that, retailers typically in the past would hang on to inventory for too long. They would be reluctant to maybe take a markdown for a number of reasons. A, their accountant had drilled in their heads that they were going to lose money if they mark it down, so don't do that. Number 2 is, I don't want to have a sale image. Nobody will buy at full price if I mark down stuff. And so all of those things are false, and they're not true. But unfortunately, it has held back retailers, particularly independent retailers. I think what we do is, as much, I've always talked about what we offer and what Sara has experienced working with us for the last 3 or 4 years, is not just the creating a framework around how to control her business and grow her business the right way, but it's also an education. Now, Sara's actually got she's very shy about this. She's not going to brag about this, but Sara has a really good background in retail, and she's also a numbers person, which is a little bit unusual, but she loves numbers. So she took to this right away. But it's not just the numbers. It is not just working with Mary, who's fantastic, and any of our affiliates are all fantastic. They're all well trained. But it is understanding a philosophy of how you are successful in retail. Because without a philosophy, without an overall overriding plan on how to really get, like Sara did, out of debt, and to really grow your business and start building a high net worth so that she can grow and she can have peace of mind and she feels good about what she's accomplished, and she should, like all our clients should. But it's not just the numbers, it's a philosophy behind the numbers. And I think that's what we're talking about today, and I think it's so important.
Absolutely. So Sara, you know, the holiday season is coming in hot. You know, and holiday 2021 is going to look a lot different than holiday 2020. Are there any strategies that you can share on your outlook coming into this season? And I think, you know, keeping in mind that the big buzzword right now seems to be supply chain disruption. I think that's if social distancing was the hot word from 2020, supply chain disruption, the 2021 buzzword phrase, I should say. So what are you seeing coming into holiday?
You know, we just talked about this, and it's actually very ironic that I was very panicked this week heading in, because I had just gotten back, and we're kind of running a little bit behind. Usually by now I would have my full holiday plan set. You know, last year going into it, we were trending very high in 2020, and then the election happened, and COVID, I mean, really, really hit the fan around where we were at. And so things just kind of came to a halt. So I had all this inventory coming in, and last year's promotions really aren't going to probably be relevant to this year's promotions. So where last year I was very heavy in certain categories, I was able to tailor my promotions for the holidays for those certain ones to make sure, you know, I got my cash back, I was able to move it, I wasn't stuck with it at the end of the year. This year we're kind of looking at it as, what can we even get in at this point? And that's kind of, we're being very flexible. I actually just got emails from my vendors that all of my October product that I still hadn't received is now fully ready to ship, and also November. So before, where I was panicked, I wasn't going to get any inventory in. We're now kind of a point where they're trying to get us months of inventory in right now. And I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if everyone just got their goods off their freight at the same time or what, but I'm knocking on wood that we're actually going to be able to get the stock. So if that's the case, then these orders will come in. We'll do a similar strategy what we did last year. You know, here in the boutique world, we also have what we're focusing on, which is called Pink Friday, which is the Friday before Black Friday, to really promote small business. So we're actually trying to push our holiday promotions up a little bit. Everyone's already holiday shopping right now. We're moving our holiday return policy up early. Everyone is just starting their shopping very early this year. So we're probably going to start our promotions a little early as well. And looking at the report and the data, I'm going to be able to say, okay, this day I want to focus on moving, let's say, shackets. I want to do a promotion on our shackets. Black Friday, we'll do categories. So I'll do special promo pricing on certain accessories or sweaters. It may be buy one, get one half off. It may be, you know, $10 beanies. There's all different ways to look at it. We're being very flexible with our planning right now. But we have the plan and the metrics to look at to make those informed decisions and make smart decisions. So we're not panicking to say, we have to do this, we have to order this, and then be stuck with all this inventory at the end of the year that we can't move.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny you say this, and it goes back to the plan, but you know, I'm lucky enough that I speak with a lot of retailers on a week-to-week basis, and you know, kind of hear some of the concerns, and one of the things I've obviously been hearing is I'm having trouble landing goods, and you know, these are retailers who are, you know, potentially thinking about using Management One services, and the first question I ask is, well, did you have a target with how much goods? Do you have a plan for how many goods you wanted to land? And they go, no, I just feel like I don't have enough. And so actually knowing what you were intended to land to do the sales, and then reacting in season like you're about to do to really drive promotions surrounding where your inventory level is at, and where there's need to come out of the season clean. And really protect your cash flow. I think that's such a great thing to hear, and it sounds like it's giving you a certain level of confidence.
Oh, 100%. There's, as retailers, and same thing, that's a normal reaction. No matter if you have the plan or not, I think you're always going to have that reaction. Whether, you know, I just did it Tuesday where I got back from vacation and I'm like, oh, we don't have, what are we going to do? Okay, I need to order holiday sweaters and t-shirts, and I need giftables, I need to do this. And then I pull up the plan. I'm like, oh, okay, no, we're good. You know, I only need so much dollars in the accessories. We're covered right now. I only need so much here. And it gives you such a sense of relief, and it saves you time. Having that plan, I could have spent hours, a whole day buying, and Lord knows how much I would actually buy. So having that report in front of me not only saves me time, it saves me money, and it makes me money.
Yeah. And I just want to, give a quick shout out to our retail experts. We talked a lot about the power of our plans and our reporting, but, can you talk me through a little bit about what that relationship is like with your retail expert and how that kind of brings it all together with the reporting?
I could talk about Mary all day, every day. I joked with her. I saw her out in LA. I'm like, you really need to put therapist on your business card. She really is. I mean, we talk weekly, and I know not everyone has that relationship, with their affiliate. Um, I value Mary so much, and she really is. She's a mentor to me. She really is a therapist sometimes to me. She gives me a level head when I am feeling panicked. And she said, okay, let's pull up the report. Let's pull up the report. Let's see where you're at. Don't panic. And she's also just a friend. She's someone who I really look to and owe a lot to the growth of my business. And I could speak volumes of her every single day, all day.
Amazing, amazing. There's one other, we're fortunate enough to work with some really incredibly talented retail experts, Mary among them, and I think that there's such a great relationship that sometimes that third-party perspective, when you are looking at plans and when retailers are diving into data, sometimes having that fresh set of eyes to view it through an unbiased perspective and be able to really drive decision making is such a powerful tool in the business. Paul, if anyone was lucky enough to see Paul speak at the Boutique Hub conference, Paul gave one of, in my opinion, the most rousing speeches on markdowns I've seen. Paul, do you want to go a little bit into, I know that, Sara, we talked about this yesterday, and if you have any thoughts on it, please jump in, kind of a little bit of a fear mindset surrounding markdowns. And I know that's something that's changed for you
100%.
over time. What does marking down goods look for you now?
You had it in the thing. I was scared deathless of markdowns. I did not like markdowns. I thought I was going to make money with them. And I would be one of those people where, I've had it for 3 or 4 months. I'll be like, okay, we'll do 15% off of it. And, after starting this, I came into this fully ready and to do everything that they guided me on. I'm an expert in knowing my business, knowing what to buy, what my customers want. When it comes to the data, there's a proven software there to tell me what to do. So I came in ready to take all the information, willing to learn, dig into the numbers. And I think one of the first things that Paul told me was, we're going to be making you mark stuff down very aggressively. And I said, okay, let's do it. And I think one of the things that I've accepted going through it is there's such a fear mindset of marking down, because like Paul said, people are only going to buy from you when you mark stuff down. But there is also a clear difference in running promotions and having markdowns. We run permanent markdowns about once a month, and we run promos every now and then as well. But our customers aren't trained to come in to know exactly when I'm marking stuff down, because it's not scheduled for me either. So they come in, they're like, oh, yay, this is on sale now. I like this. But on the other end of it, as retailers, we need those markdown shoppers. We have the shoppers who are full price shoppers. They're going to spend the money. They're going to come in. It's brand new. They don't care. They want it first. On the other end, we need those customers who do want that sale, who do want that deal, who are going to buy that merchandise to move it, because it puts cash back in our pockets. So you can't look at it at such I think, a rigid point of view. You have to, I think, accept that you are going to have people who do come shop for you just when you are running promotions and running markdowns, and that's okay, because you're going to have the other side that are only going to be shopping with you when you launch brand new stuff and they pay you full price for it.
Well, let me just add this too. I think a lot of retailers, particularly our new clients, are surprised at how many markdowns they can take and get to their gross profit goals that they want to achieve. And that's what we do is all our clients, including Sara, have a markdown budget. In other words, it's not just willy-nilly, well, you should mark stuff down. It's you have a budget in terms of what you can afford to take in markdowns. And what we find is, well, look, let me go back to, first of all, I'm a terrible skier. So let's go back. Let's talk about skiing for a second, shall we? This is where Dane gets nervous because he has no idea where this is going at this point in time. I was an idiot because I never learned how to ski when I was young. I learned how to ski when I was in my 30s. And when you learn how to ski downhill ski when you're in your 30s, you're always really nervous about dying. And so every time that I would get out of control going down the hill, I would fall. And my ski instructor said, what you need to do is you feel like you're getting out of control as you lean down into the skis, into the hill. And I go, yes, but my problem is that makes me even go faster. And that consequently makes me even more frightened. And he goes, no, by going faster, you're under control. And you will then be able to ski better. Markdowns are very similar to that. The fear of markdowns is we take too many markdowns in a boutique that our customers are going to only buy on sale, as Sara said, but you have sale customers and you have full price customers. And you want to get that sale merchandise out as fast as you can. It's rat poison in your store. It's terrible. You make mistakes. By the way, we all are human beings, but making mistakes in life as well as retail is how you learn. And so learning is, we always tell our clients, and I know Sara will echo this, that it's not just taking the markdowns. Why didn't it sell? I mean, what was it? The neckline was bad. It was too young. It was too old. It was too expensive. It was too cheap. They don't like red. Whatever the reason is, we need to learn from it. Oftentimes, I've said, Dane, you've heard me say this, that markdowns are like tuition that we pay. You pay your tuition. Getting back to education. By the way, did you see how I did that all the way back? So getting back to education, markdowns are tuition that we pay on the education of our customers. And I'm quite sure when Sara when she recognizes a mistake and she takes immediate, quick, decisive action, she's also learning. She goes, that didn't work, so I won't make that mistake again. That's a key.
Yeah, and we touched on this yesterday. For me, when I have that report and that data in front of me, my markdown percents are actually up 8% from last year. So we've done more markdowns. We're 8% more. However, our sales are up 150%. So we taken more markdowns compared to last year, 100%. But look at our sales numbers. And for us, I know going into this, certain sizes sell better. So once I get down to one size in an item, I need to mark that down because it's going to take a long time for me to sell out of all that one size. Or same thing, being reactive, say, okay, I've had this for 30 days, that hasn't turned. Do we run a promotion on it? Should I move it? What do I permanently mark it down? It's making those data-driven decisions with what you have in front of you and not being scared to do it, because let's say you even mark it down 40, 50%. You're paying at least what you pay for it, maybe getting a little bit more, but you can take that money, reinvest it into that new to get that higher margin, to target that customer who is going to come in and pay full price for that higher margin item.
Oh, totally. And I know for me, when I was on the retail floor, on the retail side of things, markdowns for me were always exciting because they were an opportunity for freshness. It sounds counterintuitive, but the markdowns allow you to open up those dollars back and bring in fresh goods. And as Paul, sorry, we got the sirens going in the background, of course, here in Manhattan. But as Paul said, there is, you can never underestimate the power of fresh goods on your floor.
One of my favorite times of year is at the end of the year, going to the new year, where we just cleanse. We get out all that old. I get that money back in our pocket and reinvest it in all the brand new spring stuff. I mean, I don't make any money, don't get me wrong, but I'm taking that cash, I'm reinvesting it into brand new stuff because my customers are ready for a new season. They're done with the sweaters. They're done, with the holiday, everything. It's time to move it. It's time to get ready for spring break, everything. And a lot of people would cringe at it. I'm like, bring it on. Let's do this.
Yeah, there's nothing like, especially your loyal customers, the power of them walking into the store and seeing fresh goods, knowing that every time they walk in, there is something new for them to shop, to explore. That exploration. That there's of course the science part of this, and that's the data and the numbers, but there is the art to it. And I think that's where, you know, the customer and the buyer who really understands the taste and what's happening and has their pulse, you know, giving them exciting new goods to shop. I mean, that's a rush that you cannot duplicate.
Yeah, and if you know, if you have like, if you're like me and you have multiple locations, like for us, we just changed a month or two ago, and now I'm in this whole new season of learning where we warehouse all of our goods into one location, our warehouse, and then we distribute from there into our 2 locations. Well, that data is so relevant to me because I can pull a report and say, hey, this store is underbought. They need this in this category. Well, I can go to store B and say, okay, they're actually overbought in that. Let's transfer those goods to that store. They're going to sell it. We don't have to mark it down. So all that data that you're seeing it's going to save you money. You don't, I'm trying the best way to describe this, but it does save you money where you don't feel forced to mark something down. You can make those smart decisions and say, okay, this store needs goods. Let's just transfer what we have over there so we don't have to come up with this cash and place another order and do all this. All that data is right there in front of you. So you can make those informed decisions.
Yeah, I mean, inventory is the largest investment in your business. It is where your cash is going. So making smart decisions with those investments, forget about saving money. I mean, that is how to run an effective retail business. So I want to be mindful of the time, and I know that there's questions out there from the audience as well. Nico, I don't know if we have some questions that came in over the conversation that we want to jump into now, or?
We certainly can in just a bit. I wanted to, before we jump into the live Q&A, and thank you guys so much for this. I know we could probably sit on here for another hour just talking about all of these metrics in business, and it's so easy with somebody like Sara that really gets it. I want to just quickly wrap up, because right before we get to questions, I am going to put a link in chat that has the report itself. And essentially what we're looking at in the report are the metrics themselves. So Paul touched on it a little bit, but we really dive into what is cash versus profitability, cost of goods purchased versus cost of goods sold, CMROI versus GMROI, and it throws a lot of stats in your face. And that's really why we wanted to have this webinar, to humanize the numbers behind the data. And I'm glad you guys really got into targeted markdowns as well. And I think the piece that is really missing in the report, another reason why we wanted to have this webinar, is the fact that, great, you have this report, you're looking at these numbers, hopefully you understand the acronyms. If you don't, please reach out to us. We'd love to walk you through some of them, but you just can't do everything. I know, Sara, we touched on this yesterday, or in our call earlier this week, that retailers are doing so many different things. They're not just looking at inventory, they're looking at social media now, they're looking at e-com, they're looking at their own team. I mean, there's a million hats to juggle. I can't spend 3 hours looking at a report, going through all of the data, and I might not even be trained well enough to spot the specific opportunities that lie in some of the reporting. So when you have a coach like Mary, who's fantastic, that can sit down with you once a month or once a week, however often you need them to be, they are your beacon to really pull the report in front of you and say, this is what I'm seeing. Are you seeing the same thing? The flip side of it is accountability. You know, last month we talked about doing X, but here we are a month later and these numbers are still wildly off the rails. So it's the two sides of the coin. It's being able to spot opportunities and being able to stay accountable to the decisions that you make based on the data. And I completely stole this slide from Mr. Erickson because I thought it was relevant. You know, if you don't have any kind of a focused goal based on the data, then any road will get you there, and you just won't ever have a direct course of action. You'll always kind of have this constant fear. Am I doing the right thing? Am I buying the right stuff? Am I spending the right amount of money? And that, I think, is the value of what we provide in Management One. And I think that folks will really get to see that in this report.
Hey, Nico, let me just add this real quick, and then, so
Please.
I often call that successful retail is about a three-legged stool. And the three-legged stools are essentially the three Ps, which are process, people, and product. And if you are weak on any one of those, you're not going to be as successful as you should be. So obviously product, you have to be a good picker. You have to know your customer and go out and buy the right things and understand turnover and all of that. Obviously having good people on the floor is critical to the success. But what we're talking about today is something that is not talked about enough, and that's the process. What is the process that we use in terms of being successful around our inventory? And that is really, I think, the last part of a successful retailer in terms of their journey to growing, like Sara's growing her business and really being successful.
And I will say, if you guys don't mind if I pop in real quick, it kind
Please
of
do.
touches base on that. You know, Mary holds me accountable, and if she's listening, she'll laugh at this. You know, we went round and round about dresses for the past couple of years, and she was like, don't get the dresses, don't get the dresses. I'm like, no, I'm going to get the dresses. It's fine. And then we had a I told you so moment, and I've learned my lesson from there. But same thing, vice versa, you know, going into this year with the trend of shackets, you know, she's like, you're really overbought in outerwear. And I'm like, just trust me, please. This is a newest trend. Okay, we'll loosen up the reins a little bit. This is how much, you know, I feel like comfortable. Let's do this. And then it was like 2 weeks later, she's like, you need more shackets. So it's a two-way street. You know, it's
Absolutely.
holding yourself accountable for bad decisions, but also I think trusting your gut and building that relationship that no matter what, your affiliate does have your best interests at heart. You may not like what they have to say sometimes, and you may not like that you want to take markdowns and accept that maybe you made a bad decision, but they're there to help make you money and to make better decisions in the future.
And Sara, by the way, I think you actually just really brought up the true most popular word, new word of 2021, which is shacket.
Shacket.
I've heard that. That's the other big buzzword.
Don't worry, Dane. I'll get you a shacket.
I'll send you my address.
Perfect.
Love it.
User-generated content. You have to tag us in it.
So I did promise at the beginning that we were going to include a link to the report itself for everybody on this call right now. If you go to the chat panel in GoToWebinar, there should be a link for a direct download. If you're watching this after the fact and you're seeing this on YouTube, go right down to the description and you'll see the link right there. So let's get to some questions. We actually do have some questions from our audience here for the entire panel. I will start with Lisa, and I think this is probably for Paul and for Sara especially. Lisa's asking, due to inventory coming in later, are the same amount of markdowns and promotions required to move product? High demand, low supply, is that factoring into your plan at all?
Well, I'll take that. You know, there have been a lot of large POS companies who have tried, and these are for larger stores that have tried to put right algorithms on what's optimum way to mark down, and all have been wildly unsuccessful. Ultimately, I think the markdowns that you have to take on merchandise, no matter what time of the season it is going to be you and your gut and knowing your customer and knowing what it will take to sell it quickly. And so I think that I don't think there is a tried and true rule on marking down other than finding the highest price that you can sell it for quickly. In other words, if you have a dress that's $100 and marking it down to $79.99 isn't going to do much good at all because it's not going to sell for $80 because it didn't sell for $100. If you know that you'll have to go to $39.99 to get that dress out of your store in a week, that's probably the price. So I don't know if I don't know, and I want Sara to weigh in on this too because she's really good at this. But I'm not sure there is a tried and true rule. I can tell you this: stuff comes in late, and it's past. By the way, put cancellation dates on all your purchase orders. When a manufacturer, if you don't have your own purchase orders, go out and create some right now. That's a legally binding contract. They should have a cancellation date on your purchase order. If they ship after the cancellation date, you don't have to take it, or you can at least start negotiating and getting a discount on that merchandise, which is happening, I think, a lot right now in our business.
Yeah, and I think Sara touched on it earlier this week, and I think a little earlier in this call too, that the promotion strategy of 2020 is not going to work probably in 2021 due to the supply chain issues.
I think
And
it'll be less
I think it'll
markdowns.
depend.
Right,
Yeah, I
Sara?
think it'll depend on your, yeah, I mean, I think it'll depend on your issue or on your situation. You know, we went into this and we've kind of given our customers forewarning. We don't know really what our holiday promotion is going to look like this year. We really don't, because we're still sitting back and trying to figure out what are we even going to be able to have on hand for Black Friday. And in terms of what Paul said, same thing, you know, I kind of touched on this, that we now have this massive amount of inventory that my vendors are requesting to ship to me. And I actually have a call with Mary after this to talk about it, because I have to make the decision that, is this inventory going to be relevant, you know, a month to 3 months from now if I bring it in and spreading it out? If not, then I'm going to have to make that decision to cancel it because it's past due. Do I bring it in and immediately run a promotion on it? And with the report, you know, that'll tell me how much markdowns I am allowed, where my open to buy is, so I can really dig in and say, you know, do I have room in these categories? Where are we trending? Yes, you can ship it late. It kind of gives you that power of control to make those informative decisions versus blindly going into it and saying, okay, yeah, ship me everything when you probably don't need it. So I think that would be up to you too. You know, it depends on, do you want to do more of a promotional and markdown strategy for your holiday? If so, maybe you should bring in a little bit, you know, a little bit more, or accept those late deliveries. We're just being very flexible right now in terms of seeing what we can even get in and what is going to come in. Did that answer the question? I hope it did.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Next question here from Michelle, also fellow Boutique member. Do you keep a markdown rack in your store, or do you just keep markdowns online only?
We do both. So this is something else that we're kind of trying. So we're trying to keep our stores now very fresh. So we do have 1 to 2 racks in our store that we keep as markdown racks. And if they start getting overloaded, we'll then move that product to our website. Our website traditionally sells way more sale items than our stores do. So we kind of try and move that product back to our warehouse and keep our stores very fresh, because our conversion rate in store is way higher than our online. So I always try and push our newer product into the stores because of the traffic and the higher conversion rate. Our average conversion rate in our stores is about 70 to 75%. Our average conversion rate for online is about 1 to 2%. So, I mean, our stores are our bread and butter. So that's really where I try and push that newer product as much as possible.
I'm really glad you mentioned that too. And it's not a topic that we have for this one, but it is something that is eye-opening for a lot of folks. When you look at website conversion, a lot of people think that the two are really on par. And when they hear how low the conversion rate is online, I think it's really eye-opening. 1 to 2% is pretty standard. I mean, if you're even getting 5 to 6% conversion rate, that's really good. Anything above that is just icing on the cake. But I'm glad that you're seeing those same benchmarks too. Final question that we have here, and it's actually very specific, so hopefully we can touch on this one. But Karen is asking, we have items that are they're old in our inventory in, say, extra small and medium, but we have customers coming in and ordering the small 1 week and the large that same week. So do we mark the extra small and the medium down, and do we refuse to order the sizes that they want?
I don't do special orders. I don't do special orders personally. Everything that we bring in, it's what we have. We do restocks every now and then, but it's very rare that we do it, just because, like Paul said, we always just try and keep something fresh and new. Or if I do bring it back, I may try it in a new color. So for us, we don't do special orders. I don't have a lot of feedback. I don't know, Paul, do you have any feedback on that?
Oh, Dane, you want to go with that?
Yeah, well, I was just
Okay,
gonna say, I'm sorry, Nico, was the question that can you mark down specific sizes in a style?
It sounded like it was 2 parts. So yes, the first question is, do we mark just the extra small and medium down, which I think would be a yes. And do we refuse to order the sizes that they want?
No, I would actually say, if you're ordering by packs, you know, sometimes there's limitations on obviously how you could bring in packs, because you're kind of at the mercy of the vendor and how they set up their packs. But, you know, as a general rule of thumb, I would not start marking down, you know, specific sizes within the size range unless those are the only ones left of that style. So if you only have extra small sitting in this particular style, then go ahead and move that style as a full style to mark down. But I would not put yourself in a situation where there's an extra small on your floor and a large at your floor at 2 different prices. I think that's something that may confuse the customer and ultimately be, you know, maybe perceived as an unfair practice. But once you do maybe sell out of your desired size range, if you're left with only a certain size, then absolutely move that style to markdown.
And I think it depends also on how long it's aging, you know, where you're at in the season. You know, if you bring a tank top in January, you have a longer length of time to sell that. My general rule for me is anything, I think we do maybe 60 or 90 days, we immediately go to 50% off. We immediately go a harsh markdown at 50% off to move it and its final sale. That's what we do for us, and it's been received really great. And it moves it. You know, it's easy, it's done, and it gets it out.
And Sara, that's such a phenomenal point, because the age-old saying, your first markdown is your cheapest.
Yeah. And we've tried the 30%, I've tried the 40%, and then I cannot tell you, majority of that, another 4 weeks later gets moved to the 50%. So we've just had really great success with just immediately marking it down at 50% and it's gone. We don't have to do an additional markdown. If we do, we leave it for like an end of year or like end of summer, and we'll do like $10 racks, $15 racks, $20 racks. And honestly, like it's all in the customer's head. You know, we may have something that's $22 on sale, but if we put it on the $20 rack, it's gone. You know, and that's $2 different. So it's just playing with it, I think, and trusting your gut, but also having those numbers. You know, if we had 2 left and have been aging for 60 days, it would be 50% off for us. We move it.
Excellent. That was actually our final question for today. So I wanted to thank everybody that joined us on the panel. Thank you, Sara, Dane, Paul, and our entire audience here today. Again, these sessions are really meant to educate. One of the things that Dane touched on earlier today is that although retailers have so many different things on their plate, what we have on our plate at Management One is retailers. And all we do all day long is speak with retailers about what the newest challenges are and what strategies are coming across to meet them. And where we can share that knowledge with you, we try to do so at every turn. So please go into the chat right now, download the report. If you're watching the replay, go down to the description in YouTube and download the report. If you have any questions about some of the acronyms, some of the formulas, some of the strategies, we are here to work with you. And we're going to be working on another webinar, retail roundtable discussion, touching on the supply chain issues that we were talking about earlier. We do have a survey as well that we want folks to fill out, just talking about what the challenges are that they're seeing in the supply chain. And we've sent an email out this week. We will send out another email again, just to get a quick 5-minute recap on what challenges those are. And we're going to reconvene next month and discuss a little bit more about supply chain. And we hope to see you all there.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Sara.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Bye.